Dragonling, Chapter 7. Derek and Xantor spent the rest of the night in the bushes outside the Great Blue's cave. At the stroke of dawn, before it was even fully light, the Great Blue appeared. The whole valley quickly came to life. With great squawks and chatterings, dragons appeared at the mouth of every cave and crisscrossed down through the air. The Great Blue lifted off. Derek sucked in his breath. Well, he said, I guess this is it. He edged his way out of the bushes and into the cave, motioning to Xantor to follow. The cave was pitch black inside, and Derek couldn't see a thing. But instantly, the air was filled with a chorus of ronks. Dragonlings! Xantor rushed past Derek, back into the gloom, and the ronks turned to excited thrummings. Derek's eyes gradually adjusted to the darkness, and at last he could make out Xantor and two other slightly larger dragonlings tumbling merrily over one another. Derek smiled. He wished he could give Xantor a farewell hug, but he knew the smartest thing to do was to leave fast. Just as he turned to go, a huge shadow darkened the mouth of the cave. Grark! Grark! Shrieked the Great Blue as she touched down on the outer ledge. Derek's blood turned to ice. She must have heard her babies cry and come back to check on them. If only he'd waited until she was out of earshot. Her great bulk filled the entrance. Derek whirled, looking for another passageway. There was none. These were not ordinary caves, he realized, just holes in the mountains hollowed out by the dragon's sharp claws. Grark! Grark! The dragon screeched again. She glared at him, her green eyes glowing in the dark. Derek swung his bow off his shoulder and reached back for an arrow. With a trembling hand, he fitted it to the string. There was only one unprotected spot, he knew, high up on the neck, just under the chin. She would lift her head just before battle. He would have one chance. The dragon reared back. Flames shot from her mouth and lit up the cave. Derek took aim and... whomp! Derek took a hard blow to the back. He fell forward. The wind knocked out of him. He twisted in the dirt, gulping and sucking for air. When at last he could breathe again, he rolled over. Xantor stood behind him. Traitor! Derek hissed, knowing even as he said it how foolish it sounded. Wouldn't he have done the same thing in Xantor's place? The Great Blue reared back and roared again, and Derek put his head down and waited for the end. But instead of flames, or teeth, or claws, he felt only a small pressure. Xantor had lain down on top of him. The Great Blue stopped roaring and started pacing back and forth, as if trying to decide how to deal with this strange turn of events. Her own dragonlings came over to her and made small mewing sounds. She picked them up and dropped them gently into her pouch. Then she came over and touched noses with Xantor. He whimpered and made little mewing noises too. She licked him tenderly, and he began to thrum. She picked him up and put him into her pouch as well. Derek was glad at least that the dragon had accepted Xantor. Now it was his turn. With one claw, the dragon ripped off Derek's quiver and tossed it over near his bow. In a mighty burst of flame, the weapons disappeared. Derek cringed. With the same claw, the dragon rolled him over. She sniffed him up and down and stared a long time into his eyes. Then, to Derek's amazement, she hooked her claw through his shirt, picked him up, and dropped him into her pouch with the others. Xantor nestled up against him. Thrum, 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 he said. Derek let out a sigh of relief. I don't know what you told her, he said, but thanks. Derek was glad to be alive, but not at all sure what to expect next. He poked his head up. The great blue had turned and shuffled back out to the edge of the rock ledge. She plucked one of her dragonlings from the pouch and set him down before her. "Rock," he said. The dragonling wobbled for a moment on the edge, then fluttered out into the air. The dragon lifted out the second dragonling. "Oh no," Derek groaned. "We would arrive just in time for flying lessons." After the second dragonling was airborne, the great blue lifted out Xantor. Xantor stood timidly on the edge, his wings sagging. "Rock," he said. The mother dragon nudged him gently but firmly, and off he went. Derek closed his eyes, then opened one. Xantor flapped and fluttered for a moment, then straightened out and glided beautifully. The next thing he knew, Derek found himself standing on the ledge. The drop to the valley below made his head swim and his knees feel like jelly. The great blue bent close and eyed him up and down. Then she turned him around and eyed him up and down again. Finally, she snorted, picked him up, and put him back in her pouch. The great blue lifted off and soared out over the valley. The wind whipped through Derek's hair and took his breath away. The ground raced by below him. He was flying. Suddenly, Derek didn't even care if the dragons killed him in the end. The thrill of this moment made it all worthwhile. The dragon made a surprisingly gentle landing. Xantor came running over, thrumming loudly, and jumped into the pouch with Derek. "Shush," said Derek, ducking down as far as he could. He was not sure the other dragons would accept him as readily as the great blue had. All the dragons had moved into the forest, hunting, Derek imagined. The great blue and her two dragonlings followed. Derek peeked out. To his amazement, the dragons were not hunting at all. They were feeding on fruits and nuts and leaves, just like Xantor. And that was chapter 7 of Dragonling.